The Cenarian expedition quickly found their long-term goal, the stabilization of the continent. Indeed, their efforts were all the more urgent in the face of the fact that Outland was actively breaking up by the day, and would likely dissipate beyond survivability given a few more months. Thankfully, no one was foolish enough to try and make matters worse. To this end, they dispatched considerable resources north to the Blade's Edge Mountains, south to the Terakar Forest, and west to Nagrand, all while maintaining their headquarters in the Zangarmarsh. Zangarmarsh, once the Zangar Sea, which itself grew out of the Spore Mound Zang, long story, was a dense swamp with a lush ecosystem and was perfect for expedition purposes. Experts of all type readied their craft and prepared for the long efforts to terraform and revitalize. Everything was going according to plan, except there didn't seem to be any progress in the local biomes. After some scouting, the expedition found two major issues facing them. The Angarash tribe of ogres, led by the overlord Gorefist, had recently migrated into the region and were harvesting the valuable mushrooms, which was causing the local bog lords to hunt elsewhere for food, which was causing issues for the poor sporelings of Sporagar. Eventually, the Angarash were intended to attack and destroy the horde outpost of Zabrajin, likely at the behest of their Naga allies, and so between expedition and horde, the Angarash had to go. The other threat were the Lost Ones, a step down from Broken. Lost Ones are often barely capable of speech and coordination, and descended into primitive and animalistic behavior. The Daggerfen, Feralfen, and Umbrafen loved all things vulgar and rank, and were further being empowered by a local demon, Zelith. Their preference for rot and decay meant they were actively antagonistic towards terrain taming efforts, and they had to go too. These two issues resolved, surely things would start improving, right? Nope. Flummoxed, the expedition began looking into every source they could think of. Magical curses, fell influence, enchanted diseases, and came up completely dry. Literally, the answer was astonishingly mundane. The Coilfang Naga were actively draining all the water in the area for their own nefarious purposes, having already exhausted the now dead mire. The expedition followed the trail of pipes and Naga to the Coilfang Reservoir, and promptly sent scouts who were just as promptly lost. Within the sweltering, humid realm of the Underbog, Coilfang and their Merc-blood servitors have relatively little presence, in regular conflict with what remains of the wildlife within. Hungerfen, the bog giant, cares little for the politics of the Naga or the affairs of the Druids, instead tending his precious Underspore, a truly ancient plant that he tends to regularly. Gazan the Hydra is ostensibly under the control of the Naga, but ultimately functions as little more than an attack dog, and enjoys killing and eating its captors as much as it does its targets. Swamp Lord Musilek is a lonely broken. Having no tribe or fellows, he roams the wilds alone, until he found a druid who he forced into servitude, that he might have one loyal companion who does not judge him for how far he has fallen. Now, Spore Walkers are some of the apex predators of the Zangarmarsh. Tall, strong, surprisingly agile, and with small amounts of latent psychic abilities, they're always commanded by a singular matriarch, the Black Stalker. Coilfang work is supplemented by a moderate supply of prisoners, forced into subjugation within the slave pens. The pens and their grim work are overseen by Menu, the Betrayer, a broken who turned in his fellows to the Naga in exchange for his own freedom. Rakmar the Crackler is a fell-infused lobstrock, semi-intelligent aquatic beings native to Draenor. The fell energy did not do him any favors, and he flies into a rage at any perceived invasion of his territory. Quagmarin, Hungerfen's brother, was once the ruler of the bog giants in the marsh. The Coilfang targeted him specifically, seeking to break their ruler and thus obtain control over the giants as a whole. The expedition noticed that both nests had very little real Naga presence, as both were low-priority facilities relegated to the beasts and the enslaved. It was further in they found actual concentrations of Coilfang power, the Steam Vaults, central hub for the Naga's entire water-plundering project. Hydromancer Thespia was a childhood friend of Lady Vosh and a perfect pick for overseeing the operations of the drains themselves. She was in direct charge of one Mechgineer Steamrigger, a leopard gnome mercenary who designed and operates the complex mechanisms of the Steam Vault's operations. While Thespia is in charge of the project, Warlord Calathresh was the military commander of the entire Steam Vault and primary bodyguard of surface operations. An early test subject of alchemical concoctions created to increase combat capacity, his reward was the post he now holds. With the Steam Vaults shut down, the Coilfang drainage plan was effectively concluded, but the Horde and Alliance forces realized the Coilfang themselves would remain a problem until dealt with. Thus a joint operation was planned to descend deep, perhaps too deep, into the Serpent Shrine Cavern itself, filled with the elite of the Coilfang forces, their most powerful slaves, and the highest among the traders. This was no small endeavor. Hydras the Unstable is a high-ranking water elemental of Neptulon. The Naga and Neptulon have ever rivaled one another, and even on another world, attempts were being made to bring Neptulon's servants low. The lurker below is a rare fish kraken, long-standing slaves of the Naga, often used as bodyguards for crucial areas. Though how he got here is a good question. Leotheris the Blind is one of the original 5 Blood Elves sent by Kael'thas to train as a new generation of demon hunters in Illidan's care. Of these 5, 3 died in training. 1 succeeded, but the 5th, Leotheris, lost his mind and roamed into the cavern to slaughter Naga indiscriminately. Released by the Horde and Alliance forces, the dangerous demon hunter is put out of his misery. Moragrim Tidewalker is a rarity, a sea giant loyal to the Naga, although by what means is not known. It is known he enjoys lording over his Murloc subjects and commanding them in service of his Naga masters. Supreme Commander of the Coilfang forces, Fathom Lord Carathresh, is a bit of a pragmatic sort. He is well versed in a ritual that he uses to consume the knowledge and power of his subordinates temporarily, imbuing him with the strength needed, heedless of cost. Sadly for him, this tactic did not save him, though fortunate for the Ashtongue, as he had been the personal jailer of one Seer Olam. Seer Olam was of the Ashtongue Deathsworn, a specific sect of the Broken under Akama, who were the highest of all Broken amongst the Illidari, and Illidan's most loyal minions. Seer Olam was being tortured and interrogated, though the Broken did not break, revealing nothing of the Ashtongue plot, which we will discuss at another time. This left only the Lady Vash, Coilfang matriarch. The woman actually has quite a bit of a history, so to summarize. Originally one of the Highborn and direct handmaiden of Queen Ashara, she was transformed, like many of the Highborn, into the Naga, following a pact the Queen made with the old god N'Zoth. She and her fellow Coilfang followed Illidan's forces, eventually journeying to Outland and hatching the plot to control Outland's people by controlling the water supply, a fittingly mundane, politically apt move for one so used to operating in aristocratic circles. The Lady Vash, however, was no match for the adventurers. With the Naga thoroughly removed from the equation, the Zangarmarsh would finally have a chance to recover, and hopefully begin supplying the necessary water to nearby areas in order to assist with their reclamation efforts.